Call the meeting to order. Thanks everybody for coming. This is our Thursday, February 19th meeting. So I'll start just by acknowledging that the land on which we meet has been here from time immemorial. People have inhabited southern Ontario for about 10,000 years, and we acknowledge the neutral people, also called the Andawanarong, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee people who lived here when settlers arrived and who share this land with us. May we together learn to care for this land and respect each other, our flora, our fauna, and the land we inhabit together. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary? Are there any disclosures? Are there any conflicts of interest? Struggling with my English today.
Pecuniary.
Seeing none of either, that's good. So we'll move on to item 3, approval of previous minutes. Are there any concerns with last meeting's minutes? Not seeing any. Do we need a motion to approve these? I'm gonna say yes.
We haven't, yeah, we have in the past. We have in the past.
Any willing motions? Thanks, Eric. Seconder, thanks, Sebastian. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. All right, we have no scheduled delegations today, so this brings us right to item 5.1, Hadley. So you can run us through your 2026 work plan.
I noticed a certain happiness on Hadley's side of things. I wonder what's causing that.
Certain what?
You didn't watch.
You didn't watch the game. Oh, I thought you watched the game.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I knew we won. I heard we won, and I heard we won a gold medal in ice skating, which has been a long time coming too. So, but okay. So do you all can see my slides? Is that right? Because I feel like I typically can see them too, but I'm not.
Not at the moment, no. We're working on it.
Okay. I'll just run through the agenda. I don't think we have a whole lot to discuss today. A lot of it will be focused on our community engagement plan and consultation. So we'll go through that. I have a survey that we've mocked up. But right now we'll just talk about the introduction for the bench scale update. I'm getting terrible feedback. Is that everybody? Okay.
People on Zoom should have their, yeah, there we go.
All right, we are going to try that one more time. And Julia, do you have access to the presentation?
Don't believe I do. Are you able to share your screen, or is that what you're doing?
Typically Alex runs it. I can try. No, I don't have a choice to share. Oh, I do. I do. 1 second. Let me get, nope, disabled share, host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Julia, if you go to participants, you might be able to click on Hadley at the bottom. Yeah, you might be able to click on Hadley and just add her as a co-host. I don't know if that would work.
I'm just sharing it from the PowerPoint to the PDF, I mean. All right, let's see. Okay, does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, and you can all hear me without the horrible feedback, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so introduction, and now we'll go ahead and go into the bench scale update. Our bugs have been, can you see the whole thing? There we go. They have been going away and trying to eat the different contaminants that we have in the groundwater. As you know, the bench scale it's to support if we can see anaerobic and aerobic degradation in the groundwater, and if we can, then maybe we would try to do a pilot study out in the field, add the same type of nutrients, and see if we can recreate what we're seeing in the laboratory. And we suspect we took samples from different extraction wells. We anticipated running it at least 8 weeks. We're seeing some results. We want to give them a little bit more time to do their thing, so we plan to run it the full 24-week period. So our results, chlorobenzene, as you all know, we've talked about this quite a bit. Chlorobenzene's the easy one to degrade. It's quicker. It works both anaerobically and aerobically. and we're seeing great degradation. So these are the different time frames that you can see. So at 0 weeks, no degradation, but now at 8 weeks, we have pretty much total degradation on all of our different aerobic microcosms. And now we're also starting to see degradation under anaerobic conditions too, with some of the different additives and nutrients. As far as NDMA, that is slower. We knew it would be slower, but we are starting to see degradation on aerobic, which is good news, under the nutrients and O2 microcosm, and also the activated sludge and methanol. And then anaerobically, we're starting to see some as well, and this is what we want to give it some more time. And I'm sure you all might notice that we saw degradation and then it jumped up again. And we think that's just a fragment of the laboratory analytical method. And we're hoping to have another round in a few more weeks to see where that evens out. Any questions on the bench scale?
Microorganism. Yeah,
I'm sorry, what was that?
what bugs are you using for this?
Oh goodness, I think Cullen talked about it a little bit more. I don't know, Lou, can you give a?
I don't know the exact, we
I
can
know.
get that.
There,
Right. So
Yeah, I'm wondering if Brian has his hand up if he wants to chime in there.
No, I was gonna ask Mike. I was gonna have a different question for Hadley.
These
So
would be,
Sure.
these would be microbes that you typically find in an aquifer or in a groundwater setting. I can get the specifics like names to the group, but yeah,
this
they're.
is specialty stuff. We'll get you some information to answer that. Yep.
It should have that, because the only thing worse than a public eye is adding a chemical is adding a microorganism.
Right, I mean, I typically,
Yeah.
we try to work with what's already in place, right? And that you wanna minimize or you wanna maximize the what you can get, right? So if you just need to add a nutrient, some oxygen, that you're better off as opposed to inoculating, like to imagine trying to inoculate the whole aquifer, it's not going to be easy to do, so.
That's right. We're trying to use what's already there, and then our different nutrients are what are giving them food to be more hungry to eat to degrade the compounds.
Yeah.
So
And I can
it's
get you
not
the
that we're
yeah.
adding bugs necessarily.
Now that Ryan has a question, is this related?
It is.
yeah, it was just about the benchtop. I apologize. Like just recalling you guys laid out the design, but I just noticed that there's no measure of variance. So these are single replicates for each time point
Sure.
of treatment.
Yeah, we're
This is
gonna do,
pretty standard in this industry, right? It's either happening or it's not happening. So we aren't planning to run multiple studies.
Okay, but you don't have replicate test vessels for
Correct.
each of the different treatments.
Yep.
Okay.
Lou, I'm sorry, did you want to add anything?
I was gonna say, obviously, we'll look at the statistics, we'll evaluate the data statistically. And then again, you'd wanna, based on this study, you'd wanna make a recommendation if the results are favorable.
Yeah.
To highlight,
Well,
like you,
that's my question would be is how are you going to do a statistical analysis on it if there isn't a measure of variance? You don't have replication. But anyway, that's just my
yeah, just stats on the data that we have, not, I mean, yeah, I know what you're saying, we don't have. There'll be some replicate testing that's available, but we're not going to try and do anything with like percent difference or any of that nature.
or analysis of variance, which would be a statistical analysis.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we do plan for a timeline, we do plan to continue it for 24 weeks. So we won't have our final data till about mid-April. And then, excuse me, it will take some time for our evaluation and final reporting. So we're targeting May. Actually, the data won't be available till May because it takes a few weeks from the laboratory. So our writing of the report will be after that. I'm sorry, excuse, I interrupted someone.
I know that there were a couple more questions, so I just wanted to ensure that we can jump over those questions for you. Mayor Shantz, if you still have your question.
Yeah, thank you, I wrote it down. I think I know the answer. This might sound like a dumb question, but once the chemicals have degraded, presumably they stay that way, correct?
Yeah,
Yes,
they
correct.
would have been uptaken by the biology and broken down chemically, biochemically. And any, you know, and the energy is used then for either respiration or to produce additional biomass. So yeah, it's not, not gonna be any residual levels or
Or when-
other.
Recreation or anything, no.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, like when the organism dies or whatever, it's gone.
it's
Yes.
essentially broken down chemically to something inert or some
Yeah.
other.
Yep, it's a
they're
good question. Mhm.
waste products, but again, those in and themselves won't represent a risk or an issue.
And Sebastian, I saw your hand.
Yeah, just a quick question for you, Hadley. It's concerns the y-axis here. The numbers here go from, this is for NDMA, from 0 to 3.5. What do those numbers represent? Is it micrograms per liter, or is it percentage? I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's the concentration in parts per billion. The numbers are quite low. Obviously, remember the drinking standard for NDMA is 0.009. Right, it's
Yeah.
2 zeros and a 9 parts per billion. So a value of 3 is quite high,
Right,
high.
right. Okay, so they have gone down, but really to the level where we need to find them, we're still a ways away.
Yeah, and we want to see the
Yeah.
trend. We're looking for the trend, Sebastian.
Okay, and the trend is good, I see that. But we're still not anywhere close to 009,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, we want to see ideally you run these tests to non-detect.
Yeah. Okay, but I hope that's below 0.009.
Yes, yeah, yes, sorry, with the, it goes without saying,
Yeah,
obviously we need it to detect below the.
Okay.
State.
perfect, thank you.
Sorry,
Are
Adam.
there other questions? No, it's okay. I can't see the audience well.
Yeah, not seeing any, Hadley.
Great. Okay, thank you. So on to what we plan for this year. At the next track meeting, we'll have Joe Ricker talk about his analysis that I think you've gotten used to seeing under Ramin about the plume and the different statistical analysis on the plume, and if it's increasing or decreasing in size. And then we hope to finish the bench scale studies I talked about. And we're considering if we need to do a data gap evaluation. So what does that mean, right? When we did the ceasing pumping test, we really tried to look at groundwater elevations and groundwater concentrations to try to find out where is the actual mass of the constituents, the NDMA and the chlorobenzene and the aquifer when we're not pumping, because when we're pumping, right, it's artificially drawing down the groundwater, so we're not actually seeing it in its static form. So we took those samples, we're looking at that information to understand if we should go in and do some targeted investigation, or would we want to target our pilot study from the anaerobic aerobic degradation testing, like the best outcome or the best few outcomes, would we want to focus on the same areas to try to do our next study in the field and see if we can increase degradation where the majority of the mass is. So we're still, excuse me, considering those ideas, talking about them, trying to understand what we would need to do. Do we need property access? What work plans would we be submitting to the ministry for approval? And those are largely our next steps for this year. So it's probably more field work, a little bit of different kind of field work than we're used to seeing. It might be some borings in the ground, some soil testing, or piloting, and it could be right on the edge of our property so that we don't have the long lead time with access from an offsite property, or it could be offsite. We're still kind of trying to pinpoint exactly where. Any questions there?
Not seeing any, but I do have one, Hadley.
Mhm.
At our next meeting, when we hear from Joe Rickards, will he be able to dive into the pulse pumping and what that did to the aquifer? Like, will we get that granular level of detail?
That's a great question. I have a prequel with him, so I'll really see if it shows in the data or not. I'll ask him to see if he can see that and pinpoint and tease anything out. So I don't have an answer for you yet, but I'll work on that.
For next meeting then, right?
Correct.
I don't see any other questions, Heather.
Okay. All right, so the next steps are on our remedial framework are continued discussions with the ministry. Of course, you know, we had a meeting today. We talked monthly with Jason and his colleagues, and then continue discussions with the track and public stakeholders. And what the ministry has said is we want Lanxess to do more than just reach out to the track. At first, I thought that would be our only vehicle in talking with the public and public consultation. But the ministry has said we want more. We want something similar to what the region would do on a roadway project or a developer would do. So I looked at a lot of what was up on Woolwich's platform. I forget the name of it, but it's very sophisticated. It's a great platform. I looked at some of those, and a lot are kind of pre-recorded PowerPoint presentations, technical presentations that people can watch. I know that there are also open houses. I know there's open houses for the planned bypass around the town, and you know, there's been a lot of interest in those. So we're trying to understand, what do people want? I talked about this at the last track meeting too. How many folks in Elmira are interested in this topic? How do they want to be communicated with? What level of detail are they interested in? What's the best format? Is it those pre-recorded technical discussions? Is it a public open house? Is it the track meetings forum? Is it just a write-up that we send out to the community electronically? So that's really kind of what our initial feedback is. I think if people had a chance to read the notes, you'll see our survey questions, and we're open to dialogue on those. What else would you all like to see in that survey? But at this point, it's not getting into the technical merits or talking about the groundwater plume or the creek or anything. It's just understanding interest. So that's for later, but I want to set that up. And then
Before you move on, do you have a question on that?
sure, go ahead.
Not so much a question as maybe a statement about some things that are going on in the community right now. So we've got some issues with groundwater, or quantity of groundwater in the region. And so whatever we do, if we do it in the next few months, is going to get convoluted with that issue. Guaranteed.
Good point.
It's quantity, not just in the groundwater, it's quantity available through the equipment and through the groundwater. We don't have answers yet.
Sorry, Eric.
Yes, I can actually go back before the public consultation and just follow up on Nathan's question, because I thought it was a really good question about the impact of the pulse pumping. My feeling is that the Ricker analysis isn't looking at those shorter term things like the center of mass, overall reduction in mass. We're down at a very fine level of how much mass is being removed. So I guess my extension to Nathan's question is, if he can't do it, if the Ricker analysis can't isolate that impact, can we find out when we might get some results about how all that is working through, I don't know, GHD, the more groundwater, the actual groundwater analysis?
Yes, we are working on a summary report for that. So yes, the answer is absolutely. If I'm not sure the Ricker analysis will pick it up either, based on when we sample and when he collects the data, but we are working on a summary report of our findings, and and of course the track will get that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, do you have a sense of when that's going to be, since we're talking about the overall work plan for the year? Like in the fall, just throwing it out there? Or can you get back to us on that? Maybe not putting you on the spot. Can you get back to us on that? That'd be fine.
I will. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
All right, not seeing any more questions, Hadley.
It might be here on this slide. So I did these before I went on vacation. I've been back up from vacation about a day, so I'm still kind of scattered. And I should have prepped a little bit more and looked at these before I shared them all with you, right? So our deadline for our schedule for reporting for this year, we have our annual monitoring report. I now have a draft of that. I'll start my review. We submit that to the ministry in late March. And then the audit report is really more focused on the plant and if there were any upset conditions, if they have any type of impacts or violations, that would be in May. We'll continue the monthly progress reports that everyone sees. We have ongoing analytical data validation and reporting that goes on with running the system and other components of the remedy. Our upper aquifer containment assessment reporting is also monthly, part of the progress reports. So our bench scale reporting, as I talked about, was June, July. Our groundwater remedial technology evaluation report. So this is that list of alternatives and where we're keen in. We do think it will be August of this year. And then, of course, for the offsite, Eric, to your point, the offsite municipal aquifer steady state condition report, we have a TBD there. So I'll have to work on the deadline for you and our time frame for that a little bit better.
No worries. Thank you.
And then finally, our pilot study or data gap work plan, that would be what would be coming for this summer. What are our next steps? Is it in situ pilot of different additives that might help with degradation, or is it studying the soil a little bit better where we know that we have more mass of the constituents? Okay. Any questions on that slide?
Seeing any?
All right, and then this was an odd and end from, I'm sorry, I want to make sure I didn't skip anything. Yes, odds and ends from the last track meeting. You all asked how much are we treating, how much is going to the creek, and what does that mean? So we looked it up and we used information from Woolwich Township on how many households, how much water people are using in the area, and that's where these statistics are from. But we're basically treating, you can see 1.23 billion liters annually. It's a lot, right? So we could supply 25,000 people or 2 towns the size of Elmira with the amount of water that we're treating and sending to the creek. So it's significant, especially I do know that the area and the region is going through a groundwater crisis, and we understand, we're part of that because we have taken this aquifer away and we're working to remedy that. But it also is there a better end use? That's the question I want to open up as we all start thinking towards the 2028 goal. Is there a better end use for this treated water than sending it to the creek? So that was follow-up from the last meeting. Any questions there?
Yeah, we have a couple, so we'll start with Sebastian.
Yeah, Hadley, can you just clarify the quality of the water that is discharged from the pump and treat system? How potable is that? I mean, what still needs to be done to make that fully
We don't treat it for what's the word I'm looking for? Like bugs that can make you sick, right? We're not treating it for yes, pathogens. Thank you. So other than that, it's drinkable and it meets the drinking water standards.
So is it a leap to say that if we just added another component to the cleaning process here that normally takes place in a treatment plant, that water could be available to this community?
I will let others answer that. I mean, I think so. I don't know if you don't want the water, right? It has a stigma coming from a chemical plant, right? I'm not going to lie. Let's talk about that. Let's be honest. So, but it is meeting drinking water standards. Lou,
Well, I'll give an
Carl,
example.
correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so just to be clear, so we have effluent standards that we meet, and those are geared towards the creek and surface water criteria, because that's our ultimate receptor.
Which are more stringent, right?
Yeah, in some cases, some of those limits are lower than what would be allowed in drinking water. Again, we're not trying to say that, one is better than, this is a different beast and animal. We're treating the groundwater for discharge to a surface water. So the ministry has required us to ensure that it poses no risk to any aquatic receptors. So that's our focus. That's where we're at. Obviously drinking water, it's just another, it's different. It is different. There's a different receptor, different things to think about. But we don't disinfect. There's no disinfection in our system whatsoever.
Well, just as a follow-up, and I'll give you an example, in most European countries now, the water is basically recycled. They just do not have the sufficient mass of water to be able to meet the needs from natural sources. So in places like Paris or London or any big city in Europe, the water is highly recycled. Okay, and I'm wondering if we can't do something similar here. I mean, here we have a major source of water that might only require another step or two of decontamination to make fully potable. And yes, there might be that yuck factor that some people will have difficulty, pardon the pun, swallowing. It's still potable, folks.
There's something to be said as we move forward, just simply also because from a greenhouse gas usage, right? Think of all the energy that this takes to treat this amount of water. And is it sustainable to then just put it in the creek?
Well, and I feel like I should speak to this a little bit. So like the region, when you're talking about doing treatment, like this still needs to be treated, and taking on a complex treatment system like this is not something the region is really interested in doing. Like this is a plume that needs to be remediated for an extended period of time, and an operation of a treatment plant is very expensive and very complex, and needs constant renewal work. It's just not something the region is interested in taking on at this point.
But Lanxess is doing that. Right?
They're doing that treatment right now. But you just take on that water force treatment and then add another level of treatment.
Yes.
But what if Lanxess isn't around one day? And then we built communities around that supply being available to us. MECP, sir. So, I mean, it's not as simple as just taking it on. There's what if scenarios that could happen in the future, and if we guarantee this water to a population, then those need to be addressed at that point. And yeah.
But those what if scenarios are true for every single well.
I mean, potentially, but here we have a known contamination issue and building a treatment facility in a known plume. Well, it's already there, but I don't think this is the place to
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of
just trying to
have
push
this.
a little bit
Yeah.
because, we need water.
Are there other, sorry,
Sorry, I saw Eric has his hand up.
I had a question on this statistics. I had lots of opinions, but. Not my place.
Yes, it is.
What I think is even more important is sort of talking to the stigma. And that is, are these numbers the total amount coming out of the containment and treatment, on-site, off-site, creek, everything combined, total? So it also contains the discharge, the remediation from, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but a fairly contaminated site, on property, beneath an active ongoing chemical extraction. So
Mhm.
to say, that water, maybe we should drink that. I think might be pushing the envelope of what might be publicly acceptable. I think a valuable, and also the contamination, so that's the on-site containment and treatment system in the municipal aquifer and the on-site protecting the discharge or potential discharge from the site shallow soils into the creek. The valuable number, I think, perhaps that might put it into more perspective of what might be available would be how much of that would be coming from the off-site containment and treatment system. That's the, broader aquifer that might be available to the region should they decide to want to use it. So if we could sort of break it out that way, and recognizing that it's into a single treatment system. But some of this discussion is also, what's the future of remediation, and that's going to change.
That's right.
And so, that quantity might not be what is going to be available in the future. So I think it would help to just sort of distinguish things from the offsite, from the onsite portions to get a better sense of the volume that's being controlled in the offsite portions.
Seem to chomping at the bit.
Sorry,
here.
I can answer some of those questions
Okay.
if, so, just to put it in perspective, the on-site system accounts for approximately 7% of that water.
Okay.
So 93% of that water is from the off-site. And I'm just pleased that, remember, I'm going off memory here, so it's 7, it could be 6.8, it could be 8, but we're somewhere in that neighborhood. So let's just say 90% is off-site for argument's sake. And I will say that, again, I'm not trying to, but these systems, for instance, E7, which accounts for 40% of the water, is its own wellhead treatment system that's not connected to the plant and is off-site. There are other components such as W3R, which is another 30%, which does bypass a lot of the treatment and has its own kind of piping, which could be tied into. I'm not, again, I don't know what the water would be used for. Maybe it's gray water, maybe it's some reuse or conservation or re-injection. I don't pretend to know what the future will hold, but maybe some reuse of this water would be beneficial and would help us on the sustainability side.
And the region is much more amenable to that. Having a water reuse component to this, because that would provide an offset to what's required to be provided by the region's drinking water supply.
Brian, do you still have your question?
It was kind of along the line, sorry for the protocol.
Right.
It was, we had discussed at one point in time, a couple of years ago, or a year ago, about using the water for others, reasons other than for drinking water, and whether it was for industrial use, where potable water was not required. And so our options are there for that. And I don't know if you'd be able to store the water for that usage and have it available. I'm not, and how you would distribute that, I don't know, but it'd be, rather than the perception of drinking water from underneath the chemical plant, you could use the water for other purposes that wouldn't require people drinking.
Did you have a question?
Well, I was gonna, that raises some points about, we're talking about costs and stuff and treating and moving it and making sure it goes more to industrial purposes. There's gonna have to be different conduits and stuff. Anyway, I think it's all a big discussion and it's all gonna cost no matter what you do. But I guess the question I have is the treatment for that kind of use versus the other use. What does it, if it came from Lennox and we treated it to be used for industrial purposes, what would have to be done to it?
Well, it's a whole other set of regulations that I'm not nearly as familiar with, but I believe.
But there would probably still be some treatment that would be needed.
I think it would depend on what the process they're using it for would be, and I think there would be agreements probably. I don't imagine to know for sure, but I think it would be the township that would potentially own and operate a secondary set of pipes, or it could be run through Lanxess themselves. I'm not quite sure how that would work, but I don't think it would be the region owning and operating that set of pipes.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is it's on the east side of town where most of our industries are.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
No, it's a good discussion. I think it's worth the dialogue, right? We're trying to find ideas. We need to explore ideas and think through them. So I appreciate that.
We may have one more here with Sebastian.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to the region's approach to this. Is the opposition or the reticence to go along with this idea primarily because of the capital expense? And the possibility that that capital expense will not pay for itself over the long term because of variables? What's the reason why the region wouldn't entertain the idea of reusing the water?
I don't want to speak entirely for the region,
Yeah.
you know, just, this is. Just kind of a public forum that really is about remediation of this aquifer. And with that in mind, I mean, I think that should be the goal and the focus of this group is to make sure this aquifer gets remediated. How that water gets used, operation of this treatment facility is complex. And it's not something the region's interested in taking on. And, yeah, I'm not sure, what was the other part of the question?
Well, I'm just wondering, the variables are such that there might be a possibility that the whole thing just stops. And you will have a capital expenditure on a plant and there's no way of actually paying for that plant at some point. I'm wondering if that's another reason why the region might not be interested in this or find it less congenial as a response.
I don't think it's entirely the cost aspect, it's. Yeah, public health as well, we're interested in protecting public health. And providing the best quality water that we can.
Yeah.
And at this point, I don't think this is the best quality water available to us.
Can I just add here, you make a really good point that there really are two issues here. One, of course, is remediation, which is what we're here for. But there's also the idea of water shortage. And the two are connected here in this town, inextricably. And we are now in the situation where basically our growth is going to be adversely affected by the water shortage. And since we cannot get remediation or the water remediated quickly enough, we have to look for alternatives. And that's why the second part or the second question about water availability and supply is now also an important aspect that we need to consider.
I'll just chime in and say I agree with you. I think that it's a very fluid situation.
Hard to find.
I lost my train of thought, but I think that we need to just be mindful of the scope and what we're here for. I agree that they are connected, but we're not going to really have a say at what region decides at this
Right.
table. That we can make the best recommendation, but at the end of the day, and Carl, thank you for being here, but I know that you're not speaking on behalf of the region when we're talking about these types of things, especially. I'm just trying to get us on scope, being mindful that we have a lot of water, 1.25 billion liters annually, that we are just putting back in the creek right now. And Mayor?
No, thanks for that. If I did my calculation right, even at 90%, it works out to 39 liters per second, which, I mean, we're looking at Wilmot producing 30 liters per second to pump back into the system. So I guess the question would be, how do we have a discussion with someone at the region who can make those decisions? Or who can have that discussion with us? I appreciate that you don't feel comfortable having that discussion, and I totally understand it. It's not a comfortable discussion for me either. But how do we make this known at the region?
I think it is no, like this is one of the things we are evaluating as a potential future supply source, and our E10 well is still one of a list of projects, but it's not prioritized as our top project right now. It's more of a long-term project. So it is something that we're actively looking at. We still have it on our radar. But we don't see that this one being able to come online in a shorter time frame.
Oh, I agree. I mean, we're looking at 2 to 3 years. What can we get done in 2 to 3 years? But in 2 to 3 years, we're getting 300 liters. I think it's 300 per second. No, that's the. Anyway, sorry, my numbers are jumbled up in my head right now, but the short-term projects that we're looking at are about 3 years. So I appreciate that this might not be a 3-year, but I think we need to start doing things in tandem.
With the control order coming up, it's almost perfectly corresponding, so I was almost gonna put Jason on the spot here and see where the ministry not falls on any of this, but if you have anything to add to the discussion.
Unfortunately, no, I don't have much to say on this right now.
Whatever the new instrument that we negotiate in 2028 is, would probably take into account this issue, though. Is that a fair
Well,
assessment?
the ultimate goal is to, well, number one, remediate the municipal aquifers where it's not feasible, potentially not feasible to do it in 100% of the aquifers. Then we're looking to Lanxess to come up with a remedial action plan or amended one, a proposed amended RAP that will consider this and come up with a better remediation that potentially supports the region of Waterloo in using a supply well in the future near Elmira. So yes, that would be considered within any future compliance instruments or revised control orders. But yes, that would be all considered.
You guys want to arm it?
I think that's a key component in our planning going forward is if we need water desperately in the region, containment of the contaminants on site or in this immediate area while being able to pump water outside the area from wells becomes a lot more important than getting absolute cleanup on site in a shorter period of time. So those conversations should be happening now to figure out our goals.
Didn't Ramin, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hadley, I thought Ramin said we could just drill a hole somewhere else in the aquifer and we have clean water. And that may not be the case, maybe I misunderstood, but is that not an option?
Just drill somewhere else in the aquifer and have clean water? Is that what you're saying?
Somewhere else, so maybe I misunderstand it. You go ahead.
No, I'm not sure. I don't know what Ravine would have said, but there is a scenario where perhaps I mean we'd like to do a test on the E10 well, right? We want to understand how much pumping that would impact. How if they're pumping at what that well can produce, does it move our plume? Can we just pump our plume and contain it so that they can pump that well and it recharges, for instance, maybe from the south. So that could be a little bit on what Ramin was saying. We need to understand that and study that a little bit better, a lot better, right? To see if it could be used. But then there's also, I've heard the region say, Carl, I don't know if it was you or someone else say, we don't knowingly pump from a contaminated and impact on water plume and regime. And the subtext is that you have other municipalities that have impacts, I'm guessing chlorinated solvents, because those are pretty ubiquitous, that are part of your systems that you are treating for constituents that you're taking out of drinking water and making it clean to the public health, for public health and for public use. So is there something that could be done here where maybe there is the remedy changes that Lanxess is now funding parts of a plant to treat for UV for NDMA in order to use this plume for a beneficial end use and not just a use that goes to the creek. So these are all the discussions that I do think need to happen a little bit concurrently, to understand pros and cons and where folks are with hearts and minds. What is palatable?
Which kind of brings us back to item 6.1 in that community consultation plan. I think that's going to be paramount step.
Good segue. That's right.
Yeah, I just, and this just is pretty much, I think what's just been said is, we are treating the water, we are doing the pump and treat, and we've got clean water. So it's not like we're pumping extra water. It's already pumped, it's already clean, and it's going into the creek. So I feel like it's a little bit different than just saying, well, we're drilling a well into an aquifer that's contaminated and we're gonna pump it and serve it up to people. So I think we need to, keep that piece clear, I guess.
We'll so that in there.
Actually, Tiffany, did you have your hand up?
No, I'm happy to wait. I was just gonna clarify how the context in which remains.
Please, because yes.
Yeah.
It was in the context of the Joe Ricker presentation, which is like there are parts of the aquifer you could put a well in and obtain drinking water standard water. However, as Mayor Shantz has mentioned, the implication or the impact on the containment of the plume and the treatment of that plume, that's the part that's less understood. So that's the constraint. And so the ministry has a blanket constraint for no use for drinking on the whole aquifer in order to allow treatment and the order to take place, like to be executed.
And if I'm reading context appropriately, it's on Lanxess to kind of come up with potential solutions as to what could happen with that water. Based on what I had heard from Jason, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Jason, but I'm just trying to read context here.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I think there's a bylaw in place for a moratorium on a certain distance from the plume. Obviously, right? I just want to be clear, like it's not the limitation is it might be 100 meters within the plume boundary. You can't have a private well or a potable well installed. I believe that's the current restriction, just to be clear. Outside of that, obviously, again, it becomes the region is the provider and of water, so they ultimately will cite and make the decisions, and it's their system, so they obviously will look at where they can get water, and they probably have a whole bunch of criteria that they go through before they decide where they're gonna draw water from. So
I can just use an example, Chair. I had an inquiry, this is a couple of years back now, from an agricultural operation who wanted to get a permit to take water to do irrigation in an orchard. And it was not feasible to proceed because of the constraints that you mentioned. Eric?
I'm going to rely on my former job experience, try to provide some context from my personal perspective on the issue. And a lot of the decisions that a municipality has to make falls under the realm of the Safe Drinking Water Act. And the Safe Drinking Water Act holds politicians and staff in the water department to a very high level of responsibility, including the potential, should they make a mistake, of being fined and or go to jail. So I think I'll let the region decide how much risk they're willing to take, but a couple of important parameters when it comes to providing drinking water supply are under the Safe Drinking Water Act, you would want, I would have wanted to have full responsibility for that treatment system. I would want to own it, operate it, and control it to all of my obligations in order to meet the obligations under the Safe Drinking Water Act. So that's, again, pretty, in my opinion, a pretty high threshold. The other thing is the quantity has to be confirmed and never changing, because that's what we base development on. So if it changes in the future, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 20 years, because we changed the remediation strategy, which we haven't even finalized yet, we don't even know what goal we're going towards. Maybe the treatment system is going to be less than it was. So committing to accept that supply also accepts the responsibility of ensuring it's there for future generations on a quantity side. So it's tough at this point to know what that future amount is available in order to bring it into a system that might be available for confirming development applications and ongoing 100 years worth of supply for that community. So I think it's also a very different discussion between the pumped water coming out of the Lanxess treatment system that's meeting the surface water objectives and the use of the aquifer that maybe is less impacted south of town or to the west of town for a future supply or as part of the supply process. So that's also part of the discussion. You know, what can we use that aquifer for? You know, we've had discussion about what we use the treated water for. Well, the other part of the equation is what we use the aquifer for. Could it be used in some manner to meet some of the region's drinking water needs? And I would also say that that's in the medium and the longer term. It's not going to probably meet their need to get some systems in place in a 2-year strategy that they need, 2 or 3 years that they need to get stuff built fast. So, you know, whatever development constraint is imposed can be resolved.
Thanks for that context. That's helpful, Eric. And Sebastian, sorry, I skipped over you, didn't I?
No, very good, because I think it sort of leads into where I'm going here. I mean, these are really interesting questions and difficult ones. And I think before we can answer them, I think we need to get a fuller picture of what all is involved. I mean, we're talking hypothetically about E10, you know, and using E10. Well, how long will E10 take to become active? What's the rate of pumping that we can expect from that? How can that be distributed effectively to the town? Those sort of questions I think are perfectly fine. But I think also looking at the other side, we do have a supply of water now. It is not clean, it is not potable, but it could be made potable. But what methods do we need to do that? What's the timeline for doing it? Who ultimately will bear the cost and the responsibility? Who will take over the responsibility? These are all sort of questions that I think we need to have answered. And my question here really is, who do we go to ask those questions or to get answers to those questions? Like, who can give us information about who can create a water treatment system for this specific purpose? Who is in the market that builds something like that? What's the timeline for building a structure like that? And to make the operating expenses on an annualized basis? What are the minimum flow rates that are required? Can we anticipate those flow rates being there over a 20, 30, 40-year period? Who knows? But these are the questions that we need to ask in order to get a fuller picture, so we have the options in the next year or two, when we really have to make some decisions, vis-a-vis a control order, as to where we're gonna go with this. And that's my question, who is the expertise? Because it ain't me, folks.
It's a combination, people. Like, it's a combination of agencies, it's
Mhm.
different professional individuals, there's environmental economists who do the, sort of the money aspect, there's the chemical engineering design folks. So it's a combination. Right now, portions of your question, the questions would be, right now, Lanxess would have some of those kinds of answers through the consultants that they work with.
Could they?
Yep, and some of these will be in our alternatives analysis, right? I think we need to look at all options. It will be conceptual costs and timeframes. May not be perfect, but it will give us a sense of timing and costs, emission, greenhouse gas costs, and so on.
Now, can this be done, sorry, just final question, can this be done within, let's say, a year, year and a half, 2 years maximum? Is this realistic to get some of those key questions answered, so that we can have, let's say, a spreadsheet with option A, B, C, D, and say, right, these are the
I think
criteria?
comparative costs could be done. Yes, they may not be perfect, but it may help for us to focus. You know, like building a whole new set of pipes around the town to supply industrial water versus treating at E10, or understanding if E10 can be pumped at a certain amount. The region would have to, provide information on how it would go into their system. I remember Carl saying that they have a trunk line very close to it. So it's a group effort a little bit, but there are some takeoff costs that we can put together, my consulting team.
Eric,
I guess. As a community, we think we've got a water supply problem. First thing this committee thinks is, oh, we've got water here, how do we use it? But our real mission is remediation plan, make sure we're happy with that. So we should stick with that, but at the same time, I think we as a committee want reassurance. The region has considered this aquifer in their planning process and has said, no way we're gonna touch this water because we don't believe in it, or we've considered we can't make economics work, or we do need to evaluate this. How can we as TRAC, we as Lanxess, participate in that conversation, be helpful, decide if it's worth pursuing or not. As a TRAC member, as a counselor, I'd really like some assurance that conversations happening between the region and wherever it is at Lanxess. So we know whether or not to proceed.
I think that's reasonable. I can take that back to folks, staff at the region and see what the answer is there. I don't want to give you an answer today, but I think you guys are bringing up reasonable points. Yeah, we can respond with a more fulsome response to that.
I'm wondering, and I really do appreciate this conversation, we've kind of slipped into 7.2, but that's fine. This is complexity layered on top of complexity here, and I'm wondering if this would be an opportunity for us to set up like a special experts meeting to kind of go through some of this, to have a forum for some of these conversations to be had. I don't know what the community thinks or feels about that, but this seems like one of those that we really should continue to push. And if we can do that outside of committee hours, then that might be a good way, good strategy. Throw that out there. Any thoughts, feelings? Sebastian?
I take Eric's point, I mean, there's the fear that we are in scope creep here. That we've unilaterally gone beyond our mandate, and I appreciate that concern. But I also think everybody should know that this is a serious matter, right? You know, and we are now in the situation, not only do we, we're not really close to getting fully remediated water, very potable drinking water from our own sources. But we have limitations on the sources that we get from outside. And that is going to have an impact on us. So yes, we need to be mindful that we might be going to territories where we're not really entitled or supposed to go to. But I think it's understandable why we're interested in this. And my main interest here is just to ensure that this isn't just sort of buried, that this gets lost. This concern, because I'm speaking here as a concerned citizen, not just as a member of TRAC here, but as a concerned citizen that we have an issue here that needs our attention, needs the attention of responsible authorities from the municipality as well as the region. And we need to make sure that this just doesn't get sidetracked because somebody's not paying attention. And that's, I think we need to have some activity on this that's concrete, that everybody realizes is there. And yes, that might require the council to create a new, a council committee of council, because it's beyond our mandate as TRAC. But I just want to make sure that everybody understands the centrality of this.
Linda,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or amend our mandate.
Or mandate.
So appreciate the points and the thing about, you know, our scope is remediation. And I guess my view is yes, I've been sitting here as a member of the committee for several years, or the group before, and looking at this is remediation, but I've always had in the back of my mind, end game, what is the end game? What's the purpose? And if we're just here to say we want the water remediated and that's it, and then whatever goes on afterwards is, I said, well, I think I've kind of been wasting my time, because in my view, I've been here with an end game for it to be used for a purpose, which is what we're talking about. And if we can't talk about that, then maybe we need to look at what it is, our terms of reference.
That was my question. It was like, what is our end goal of this remediation? Like, is it to be able to use the aquifer again to provide the town with water, potable water? And if it is, then yeah, these are the things that we need to start looking at.
Right.
But if there is no plan to use the aquifer because it is contaminated and it does have a stigma to it, then what are we doing all the remediation for, and continuing on and on and on after this initial period to continually try to rectify the problem? So I would question what we're doing with the aquifer afterwards.
such fun conversations we're having here tonight.
We'll stick to this.
Yeah,
Did you want to go back to the question about having a?
I did, thank you. Didn't really get a lot of feedback on that question. I do appreciate. Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay, that's great. Can I leave that with you to organize?
Yes, I, with Lou's help and Hadley's help, to maybe host a similar technical experts meeting as we've had in the past. I will work with them. Is that okay, Hadley?
Absolutely. And the region and ministry.
Yeah, but similar invite list as we've had in the past.
Any other thoughts on this matter?
I would just say, I think this is a good discussion, and I think it's perfectly, it's the place to have it here, so, I don't think it's a wrong discussion. I appreciate what you're saying about scope creep and, you know, where are we going, but, we're doing it for a reason, and so part of what we wanted to talk about this year was, where are we going and how are we gonna get there? So this is that part of that discussion. So I think it's legitimate, but I hear your concern about getting too far into some other scope.
All right, Hadley, I think we're back on track for your presentation now.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the next discussion is about the consultation program for public feedback. So it's a lot of what we've talked about, right? And I appreciate Sandy's point that it will start to get convoluted now with the water crisis, the current shortage. I hadn't fully thought of that. So as I stated, there are regulations that we need to follow, and and also the ministry needs to follow that public consultations required. And then also, before we have a new permit or instrument, a new ECA or control order, there will also be, I think there's it's published, right, for an additional public comment period. I think that's what this slide's trying to say. But Lengths, as we've thought about this, I've been working with my corporate communication team, and you can see in red what, what we're trying to focus ourselves around, that this is collaborative and transparent, and we're taking all of the conversation into consideration to help us inform a decision process. So what does this look like? I think our first steps will be to start out with a survey to really understand how many outside of the track in the community are interested, how do they want to be communicated with. We expect most of the consultation will occur next year, so we'll be looking at our alternatives fully this year and really trying to focus in on what ones make the most sense that we should travel down further and take, focus in on. So that would be a lot of what the discussion would be in 2027, to talk about those alternatives and what it would mean and get public feedback on them. So they're not looking at the whole width of and breadth of ideas, but really the ones that are most feasible. And now for the discussion on the survey, unless there's any questions in the room.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are in there twice. So this is what we had come up with, and I don't know if we want to talk about, read through this all, or if folks have read through it and just want to start focusing in on questions and points they may have had from your own reading.
We're in your hands, Hadley. Why don't we just walk through it? I don't know that we have to go through every question. I don't know how many questions you have.
Okay. It's not that long. It's a few pages, and you can see it's pretty spread out. So we put together these few paragraphs to talk a little bit about the history, and that the survey is intended to gather community input and help guide future communication and planning efforts around the future of Elmira's groundwater remediation and use. So just general awareness. First off, are you aware, fully informed, not aware at all is the spectrum. Awareness of the historic water crisis. How aware are you of the historic groundwater impacts and ongoing cleanup efforts in this area? Same thing. Not aware to fully informed. When did you first learn about the region's groundwater impacts? So gauging timeline within the past few years, many years ago, I'm not sure, or recently. Level of concern. Is this important to you? Extremely important, not important at all. How concerned are you about long-term groundwater conditions and future water supply? And I imagine right now this one it's timely, right? So not concerned, slightly concerned, moderately, very, or extremely concerned. And then interest in ongoing updates. Would you like to receive updates about monitoring cleanup progress and future activities related to the groundwater project? Yes, no, unsure. If yes, so this is only for folks that answered yes. What is your preferred way to receive information about the groundwater cleanup? And this gets to the heart to help us understand where we're going towards for 2027. Do you want email updates, postal mail, in-person open houses, pre-recorded educational sessions? As I spoke to you, that's what I saw a lot on the Woolwich Engage page. Live virtual sessions like we're doing now, project website or online dashboard that you can go for updates or other, and we've asked folks to specify. And then finally, we have a section for comments. So this is what we had thought about putting up, and Alex indicated that the Woolwich Engage platform has a way to distribute it to the population of Elmira. So that would be the forum. And now it's just really to make sure that the track understands the questions, if you agree with them, or if you have modifications that you'd recommend. And I'm happy to either, people can, I think you all have my email, you can send me them separately or we can discuss them here.
Feedback for Hadley? Tiffany?
I think there's just some wording feedback. I think that it's a great, entry point, for engaging with the general public. I'm not sure I would call, like, under awareness, how did you first learn about the region's groundwater impacts or like?
Oh,
impacts?
Elmira. Sure.
Yeah. You know, that sort of editorial stuff that I think we can give you feedback on.
Okay, that's a good point, right?
And I go to Brian first and then I gotta.
Oh, yeah,
but
this
you
one's
feel your thunder.
This one's easy. Under the under number, sorry, 2B or whatever it was, when are you concerned about the long-term groundwater conditions and future water supply? I think those should be divided out, because right now with the talks that are going around the region, everybody's very concerned about water supply. Maybe not taking into consideration the long-term groundwater conditions. So
Okay.
everybody would be answering that one based on the second part of that question.
Right, Eric?
I guess I'm a little bit concerned what feedback we're gonna get on this one. I think the survey will get minimal number of responses at best, because it's kind of a dry topic. People that are really concerned are concerned and will always be concerned, but most people won't read this page. I think we've got a fair bit of experience in-house in terms of public engagement. The region's put on 2 good transportation open houses in the last year. 2 good ones, I'm gonna say 2 well-attended ones. One was very effective, I felt, and one was not publicly accepted at all. So we've learned what to do and what not to do. I think at the township, we've got countless people who could help with suggestions to how to engage and get feedback. But I think this survey will be a bunch of work and not overly effective for us as a committee or for Lanxess. I don't like making work for people that it's not helpful.
Well, a little bit it's trying to understand the audience, right? Is the audience as big as the bypass audience? Is it, so how do we tailor, because we don't want to plan an open house to that degree if we're not going to get that many people either, right? So I hear exactly what you're saying, but it's trying to understand how big we jump. So how many respondents do we, I think it's almost like reverse 911. I think it will be sent to everyone, and I don't think Alex is here, but she could correct me if I misunderstood the technology. I thought it would be sent to everyone, and then only those who replied that they were interested in this is how they'd like to hear the information. That's the feedback we would get, and that's really the audience that we would want to talk to and make sure we're tailoring it for them and jumping to that level, right? Is it, I think you had about 100 or 150 people at the bypass. Is it that many, or is it 40? Is it 20? Is it the track? So it's just trying to understand the audience. I don't know where else to start.
Yeah, and we have to start somewhere. So this is a reasonable starting point in my mind. To Eric's point, yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can push it to Elmira residents or if Alex meant that it would be placed on Engage Waterloo for Elmira residents. And if it would have to be more of a proactive effort on behalf of residents, or just be kind of dished to them. I'm thinking it's more of the former than the latter.
I guess I think the bar we're gonna have to meet for public consultation is gonna be higher than what survey response would indicate.
Yeah, and I think to Hadley's point, though, this is the entry level, and then this would dictate what kinds of questions that we could bring forward in an open house. And correct me if I'm wrong, Hadley, but that's what I.
Yep, that's right.
So this is the starting point, I think, and there's still lots of work to happen after this, including the town hall.
Oh yeah, this isn't it. We're not one and done with the survey by any means.
There were some other questions or comments. We'll start with Sebastian and go to Eric.
Decades of experience in academia has made me very suspicious about questionnaires and surveys and so on, because we get them on a continuous basis. And a lot of them, I think, are superfluous, so we have to be very careful about overusing this as a tool. As soon as you get 2 or 3 surveys from the same source within a very limited time period, people turn off. They don't respond. That's been my experience. Or you'll even get very nasty responses. Okay. So yes, as a tool, I think it's valuable, but in moderation. And my recommendation here would be to limit this to a point where people actually feel they're making some interesting decisions, or putting down comments of an interesting nature, of a substantial nature, not just, yes, I know about the groundwater issue, or I don't. I think that's when we get into a certain level of understanding in the wider community, that's when a survey like this might be interesting. And you might get more actual responses, which could lead to an open house or something equivalent where we can have an engagement with a wider public. So my recommendation is the questions here themselves, I don't think you're going to get a lot of response. I share Eric's concern about that. I think it's when we get into more substantive issues like what kind of options are available for the community. What are those options in terms of timelines? What are those options in terms of cost? What are the cost implications for your taxes? Those will get responses, and I think you'll get a lot more response from the general public when you get to that level. An introductory survey like this, I think, will give limited use, to be honest.
Thanks, Sebastian. Eric?
Yeah, I'm not comment, I agree with the comments about the process and think about why we want to use the survey. Always an important question to ask, why are we creating the survey and what is this information going to be used for, is a good way for establishing what kind of questions you want to. I agree with Tiffany's comment on clarifying what the issue is, and I liked the way the preamble spoke to Elmira's, water crisis or groundwater contamination, and again, just to distinguish it from what's topical in the region of Waterloo over the last couple of months. And then specifically in question to the second part of question 2, I call it 2, I think you called it 2B, that's the same one. The end of that question, says, well, the set question is, how concerned are you about the long-term groundwater conditions, in Elmira, I would suggest, and future water supply? Well, that's pretty open. The second clause is a pretty open-ended question. Maybe it could be rephrased to be the future use of Elmira's aquifer for drinking water, or the future use of Elmira's aquifer for other water uses. Those would be 2 useful pieces of information to get community input on, as because this is a lot of what we've been having this discussion amongst ourselves here. So, should we decide to go with this survey, I agree with Tiffany, and I can supply my, try to be more concise without being too technical. That's always the other thing we have to worry about, is making sure that we're not too technical in what we're saying, because that often goes over people's heads. Or it gets misinterpreted. Thank you.
Mayor Shantz.
I guess the other piece for questionnaire is, what are you going to use the results for? So is the end goal of this to just get a list of people who want to receive updates, and put them into categories based on their sort of their knowledge, or so what are we hoping to have at the end of this survey, I guess is the question.
That's a fair question. And I might be an eternal optimist, right? So say we get 50 responses, 10, I don't know what it will be. But what is the majority after? And I think it would be probably going after the majority want and then the second want. So if people say they want in-person open houses, we will do that. If they say they want live virtual sessions, we will do that. So what are the two? I'm just guessing since I don't have results in front of me, but what would be the preferences of those respondents that are interested, and trying to focus in on what they're after. For instance, if nobody says they want anything in the postal mail, we're not going to send a mailer, right? Period. So just really trying to gauge interest and then target it towards what the audience is asking for. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, I was the one interrupting at the beginning. I think that it's an important step that we take to ask some of these questions. I just want to make sure that we're asking appropriate questions, not banal questions. And so, like for me, the question like, what is the definition of clean to you? I know that's open-ended, and maybe we don't want to go down that route. But to me, that's going to generate more useful results than like, are you type questions. And that's just my feedback for you on that.
I feel that you're focused more on the solution, right? So this is really just who's the audience and how do they want to be communicated with, not necessarily let's solve the problem by a survey.
Gotcha.
And I think that's what Sebastian was indicating too, by trying to be a little more technical with second questions. Maybe there'll be a future survey, right? Maybe when we have an alternative analysis and we have focused on a few alternatives, we could submit something at that point too. But right now, I'm just trying to gauge interest.
Yeah, and I think if that's our purpose here, then that makes a lot of sense. We can tailor the questions really to try to generate that level of engagement and figure out how to best reach people. Hopefully we get a good representation in the survey, because it's kind of the cart before the horse in a certain respect, because we're going out with a survey and there's a certain type of person that's going to respond to a survey that may not go to an open house. And so to get the response, I prefer an open house and a survey. You see the circular reasoning, but again, you have to start somewhere, right? And so I think that this is a good start. Sorry, Eric.
Yes, I think bringing it up to the higher level, Hadley, I think I like your bullets above the actual survey questions. Your intent for the survey is to determine how to collaboratively engage the public in a consultation program, ... on the future remediation approach for the groundwater. So it's about how do you want to receive information? Do you want to really go, as Hadley said, do you want a survey, or do you want a newsletter, or do you want an open house? I think that's really important to understand. We're not trying to necessarily get people to the solution. It's trying to figure out how to best get them engaged, so that when we do have the formal public consultation, we can try to maximize those efforts and really get the engagement at that point. Those are the preliminary, and maybe that the preamble, Hadley could speak to a future decision that is, on under changes to the remediation approach, maybe not approach, or changes to the remediation, that I'm not getting the right instrument.
Strategy, maybe.
Strategy, expansion, all those kinds of words that speak to, ultimately, we're looking for engagement to help us at this decision point, not just community awareness, but engagement at this decision point.
No, I think that's a great way to put it, and to me that makes a lot of sense. It gives us a very intentional reason to go out with this survey, and the results from that would be really useful in directing our future comms plan then.
What would be, I guess my question is, what would be the process now to provide Hadley with the suggestions and the feedbacks, other than re-listening to this meeting?
I took a lot of notes. Let me try to come up with an idea. I took a lot of notes. We can come up with a version 3, see if we capture everything. And then perhaps if folks want to send me individual edits back, that would be okay. Does
So
that work?
that'll be circulated after the fact then, and
If Hadley circulates version 3 to track, and then track members are invited to approve, provide feedback before our April meeting.
perfect. Like that strategy. I saw some hands, Linda.
Just a suggestion, because I don't normally like to use it, but I would suggest if we're doing it, we're probably doing it through email. And I would suggest comments, if you're sending them out, reply all. So that we're not repeating ourselves, or if there's something we're not 100% agreeable on, or would like to see something we can comment on it, but we're all seeing the same thing.
Okay. Brian.
Just a question, this happened back in the early nineties, and the demographic of our town has changed a lot. And I'm wondering just how many people are even aware that this is an issue in our town? And now we're asking them these questions about remediation of our wells, our water system. I would imagine a majority of people don't even know about it and aren't even aware that it is ongoing and it is still a thing. It happened over 30 years ago. And most people in this town might not even have been alive when it happened. And so, what preliminary information are we giving them in order to say, okay, so this is where we're at, and these are the questions that we need to know now? Because you're gonna hand out a survey to people who aren't even aware that there's an issue. Well, where does our water come? Well, it comes from the tap. And they're not aware that we had this big problem unless you lived here 30 some odd 40 years ago.
Jason has his hand up.
Jason has nothing.
Well, what about within the survey and the preamble to help address that question is provide the link to the Engage platform, because isn't this Lanxess remediation on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we had worked on some other documentation that will be going up eventually, in terms of like timeline documents and stuff that can help people to pick up that history. I think it's a great point that you make. If we're going out with the survey, people pick this up and say, what do you mean there's polluted groundwater? That's kind of problematic in and of itself. So if we can prevent that from happening, I think it would be to everybody's advantage. Do you have a comment, Eric? No.
But I mean, I can almost see it going both ways. If I were new to a community and I got this survey, I would dig deeper. So maybe it will have new people say, "What? Let me find out about this. I want to know." Or maybe they'll be apathetic. I don't know, but hopefully they'll be interested.
All right, so we have
The cynic says, fucking else in
we have a strategy moving forward on this, so that's fantastic. Is there any other comments, questions, observations? Excellent. All right, thank you very much, Hadley. Do you have anything
Absolutely.
else for us, Hadley?
I don't think I do.
Excellent. Well, that brings us then to item 7. Since we've discussed 7.2, I'm gonna leave that to Julia to try to figure it out for the minutes. We really only have 7.1 to discuss, so that is meeting dates and draft agenda items. I'm gonna throw this one to you, Tiffany.
Okay, so in your agenda package is the sort of drafted dates and proposed agenda items, which we prepared in consultation with Chair Nathan and Hadley and myself and Alex. And so that is on page 26 of the package. So the next track meeting, our terms of reference requires a minimum of 4. So we have 5 in there. The next track meeting is track meeting 2 of this year, scheduled for April 16th. That's sort of tying in with the March 31st deadline or submission date for the annual monitoring report. And so that would be a pretty key agenda item for that meeting. We will revisit the sort of version 3 plus feedback from the track committee members. And then before that meeting, there'll be a draft presentation to council or a sort of maybe an outline of what subject matter we'll cover off in the May 12th council meeting update from this committee. So that's sort of what we're proposing would be part of that meeting, barring anything drastically different happening than expected and what planned.
I did have one other item I forgot, and Jason reminded me. So we had talked, Tiffany, you had brought up about a timeline for the remedial action plan and what it means, and maybe a remedial action plan 101, similar to what was done with the risk assessment. Like, I think before track, you all went through a primer with an expert on what is a risk assessment and what does it mean? What do you look at? So we are also talking about providing something like that, and it would probably be a GHD work product. We'll come up with a timeline. Someone from GHD will talk about what is a RAP and a remedial action plan. What are all the components of it? What are the milestones? And we wanted to talk about, is that another track meeting, or is that something that we would want it to be like a technical presentation that you all could watch at your leisure? I don't want to abuse your time, right? Because I think it would be heavy lifting. When I say that, I mean boring, right? It might be kind of a boring topic to listen to, pretty technical. So if folks could listen to it when they wanted and submit questions, or we could then have a live presentation with the Q&A to answer everything. So I wanted to think about how you all wanted to see that, if you wanted at a track meeting, or if you want it to be otherwise else, a different venue, or watch at home and then submit questions that we could either cover during the track or at a different time.
So thank you, Hadley, or remind Jason. The format that was the risk assessment was two-part geo-environmental pre-recorded technical presentation about what's included and what is a risk assessment, how is a risk assessment executed. So for those of you that were part of TAG, that would be the pre-recorded option versus a live presentation. And it had materials too that was available to sort of summarize.
Any preference around the table?
We still got together as a group going.
Yeah, I think there's value in it being viewed. We viewed it as a group.
I definitely think there's value in having a pre-recorded session, because ideally we'd be able to put it to engage Waterloo Region, and then it can be consumed not just by track, but by public as well. If they're so inclined to go through and watch what would be a stimulating presentation by the sounds of it. And so I would kind of lean into that, but I definitely welcome just having a live meeting as well. And so I don't know that you have an opinion one way or another, Hadley. We'll leave it in your capable hands.
Okay, we'll keep working together on what the presentation will look like and work from there.
I think it's a very valuable presentation to have to understand what's involved.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, if I could,
Yeah.
Like, how long do you think this presentation might be? Like, is it worthwhile to have quite a long presentation and then, like, I just tend to think if it was gonna be a very long presentation, then a video format might be better. Whereas, if it was gonna be fairly short, then.
I think that the concern that Hadley and I have is that if it's too short, then we're just rushing through. And we're really doing the committee an injustice then, right? So we want to have a good conversation, want to cover a lot. We don't want to monopolize a meeting, because then that takes away from a track meeting.
And dialogue, right?
And I guess we want to be open, like we want to give you information, and then we can have the presenter come for questions to a meeting. We could set up another time for questions. we just don't wanna really take away from the track focus, educate people. And we also wanna be respectful of your time, right? Cause I know that in the past, like meetings have gone till 9:30 a couple times because of these types of things, so. I'm just trying to be sensitive to that.
Jason? Sorry.
I do like the option of the video option, just from a perspective of in a following track meeting, you could really focus the discussion or any follow-up questions. And then I do recall back when Comtura brought in Ron Breacher several years back and did a kind of a crash course risk assessment 101, and it was, I think, well, there were several items on that agenda, and the presentation took the entire time and then some. And I do recall two people falling asleep. So, so yeah, my vote would be towards the video, and then, like I said, it gives people time to actually take some notes and think about it, jot some questions down, and then you can have a really good focused discussion on it.
It could, uh, it could fit well into track 4, which is if needed, September 17th. If there was, a presentation, a pre-recorded technical presentation that could be viewed over the summer. And then have a Q&A in September. That's it, that we could.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think that gives us lots of time then.
Yep, that's a good idea. Good target.
Concerns, comments? No? Awesome. All right, thanks, Hadley. You have everything you need from us then?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, so correspondence, we got the monthly progress reports for November, December, and January. Definitely you did provide some documentation.
Yeah, so it seems to me that, like the main sort of not perfect, issue is the repair issues or the trying to line up a lot of water, basically, to be able to come and, investigate and then rehabilitate or address. I believe in or early February, you had the pump replaced. Right?
That was just done, yes.
Yeah. And I think that was basically the main thrust. Everything else, like containment, was maintained as shown in December's report. There was one item I just had a question about, which is, you did a broad scan analysis on the discharge water. Am I right in that? Like,
Yeah, I think that's just a regular.
Is that regular?
So
That's what I
once
was
in a
wondering.
while, kind of open.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
that's right. I don't think there's anything, it's just, again, just something that's required.
Required, okay. Yeah, I just didn't recall.
It's not
previous-
we don't do that all the time.
Right, okay, I had
But it is
recall
required.
seeing that, but I thought that's a good thing.
Linda?
Chair for you to, yeah, that, it's not always in there, but there is quite often, when I was reviewing the reports, I saw the broad scan, so. I kind of go through them now and I kind of look for certain things, so
Okay.
yes, they have been in there before, so.
Okay.
I can,
Sebastian?
If I can just interrupt here, Tiffany. My perception is that the equipment is wearing out quicker. We've had to replace either motors or screens, various equipment, at a higher rate than we did just 5 years ago. And I liken this to sort of a car that might be 20 years old and you put a lot of money into it and it works for another couple of months or years, but then boom, the whole thing just collapses. What's your fear that we might actually have a collapse? Is there any possibility that the whole CTS could just go belly up for?
No, I would, if I can, Sebastian, I mean, a lot of, and I think we've touched on this in the past, I just want to reiterate, so the system's been designed with redundancy built in. I do want to stress that working at Lanxess is not like working out on a brownfield site or anything else. They're a chemical company. They have a certain standard and a way of doing things. A lot of the systems that we've installed have inline backups kind of in the system. And then when you don't have an inline backup in the system, you have to have a spare on the shelf. And I will say they look at, Lanxess looks at the groundwater treatment system and treats it as any other process that they operate. And they're in the business of production and keeping things going. So you weren't wrong when you say it is an old car and things wear out, but there's a constant renewal in the system. There are preventative maintenance schedules. There are tanks that are taken out of service every 5 years to inspect the tank walls. So they look at this stuff very critically, and they operate at a higher standard than one would typically see.
Look,
at, you know.
I'm going to give it a swing too. I agree with what Lou is saying, but we're limited a little bit, like Tiffany said, with a lot of water, right? So a lot of our pumps and our wells need work. And I've been trying to be proactive and not waiting for a problem. But the problem is I'm waiting for a contractor to help me be proactive. They're just busy. It's who the region uses too. There's not,
Yeah.
it's hard to schedule and to get their attention, right? I have a big contract with them and they're still saying, oh, we're going to push you off a little bit longer on typical things we're trying to schedule. But they're good. They do good work. They're just busy. And then secondly, we have a lot of redundancy. If you remember when you came out to the site, we have some of the UV systems that are very old. They're a very old car. They do take some upkeep. They do take spares on the shelf for the light bulb, the bulbs and so forth. And we have all of that. But then we have brand new UV systems with the Trojan system that are, that have great capacity and are top of the line, state of the art right now. So if there were a major upset and one part of our system went under and broke, we would be able to figure out how to reroute the water, because if you remember, we have different trenches and different lines going in different directions. We'd be able to handle the capacity until we could get that other section back operable.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of water is perhaps maybe a constriction, but the issue is there aren't that many, when we've looked at it, there aren't that many providers of that service. There are well drillers who will do that work, but that's like going to somebody that's their secondary or tertiary kind of service line. That's not what they do for for their job, for their they're not in that business, in that space. So we find that a lot of water, when aside from their availability, they're trying to do great work, but it's a constriction. Yeah,
I'm just worried, I mean, there's natural, I think proclivity, anybody who's got a 25-year-old car, you gotta expect that thing to fall apart at some point,
I will say again, and I think we touched on this before, when going back to the old Rayox systems that are over, some of them over 30 years old. Again, Lanxess has the in-house expertise and the parts that they can replace the wiper systems, they can replace the air systems, they can replace the pneumatic drivers, they have essentially rebuilt these systems from the bottom up. They pulled out the program logic controllers 3 times and upgraded them. And that's the kind of thing that it's an old car, but think of it as a classic car. You can still, a classic car, if it's treated well, can still look like it just rolled off the production floors.
Okay, just one little question I noticed in the February 15th report that we received for January. Under correspondence, meetings and events, Lanxess submitted a letter to the ministry with notification of a revisited historic couple chemicals data from ALS. Just, I wondered what that was about.
It was, we had the lab it basically indicated that there was a slight issue with some historical results. We felt the need to just be transparent and report that up.
Okay.
It had no effect on performance or any previous reports or any outcomes, but some of the numbers changed. We provided that clarification to the ministry and we just were trying to.
That's what I kind of understood from there, but I just wasn't sure.
All right, anything else? Have our next meeting date scheduled for April 16th, 2026. I believe that's at 6 o'clock as well. Sorry to those of you who typically eat at 6 o'clock, welcome to bring in some food here if you so choose. But if you haven't had a chance to eat, well, we just need a motion of adjournment and you're free to go. Linda and Brian, thanks. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, everyone.